On May 22nd, Stars Reach Pre-Alpha did another update called Better Homes and Gardens. I'm Controlled Chaos, and in this video, I'm going to go over the main topics of this update. Let's go ahead and get into it. First off, they did an XP refund and reset. So all of your skills have been reset. You don't have to go and create another character. Just all of your skills have been reset. All the experience has been refunded to the correct experience pool. So if you did some mineralogy, you've done some combat, you've done some biology and things like that, you'll find that the experience points have been put back in there and you'll need to reassign them. And there are reasons to this, and will be explained later on. Another thing that they've reset is the floral. So all of the trees, the bushes, the flowers, the mushrooms, the logs have all been reset on all of the worlds. They did this because of the work that they did with the floral settings in the game, which is really nice. But they've added one other really cool thing. They've added in soft grouping for when you're harvesting. So when you're out there getting the different plants, bushes, mushrooms, harvesting trees, you're out mining, you're out doing other resource gathering things. If someone else is out there near you and harvesting the same things, you will both get enhanced experience. However, it's only for the first person you're near, not extra people, because they found that the more people join in, the quicker it ramps up and the more out of control of the XP goes. Hopefully they can fix that and balance it out so it slowly, gradually builds up so you can have more people and have big groups and have it beneficial to do that. Would be really cool to see that. There's also now for combat loot sharing. So if you're in combat and you're fighting mobs with someone else, based on how much aggro and how much damage you output in that fight will determine how much of the resources you put out. They say that they don't do this by decimals, but there is some decimal effects in this whole entire thing. So like, let's say you get about 0.2 of the aggro or damage, there's a 20% chance you will receive loot. However, if you do 2.8, you would receive 2 resources and 80% chance of a third resource. So basically, wherever the main number is that you do of the aggro and damage will be the amount of loot you get. And then wherever's behind that decimal point will determine a percentage chance of you getting a little bit more, one more thing of loot. And I think that's really cool, really smart move there. The other great thing is if someone picks up the loot and it's meant for you, it will be sent to you. They will not receive it, you will get it. And that's a really nice way of doing it, because then it's not, oh, they got to loot, I didn't get anything type of thing. It's, oh, they got to loot, it gets sent to me, thank you. So for anyone who's out there that you see picking up the loot in combat and you're not having to worry about that and you're getting the loot automatically put into, thank them for running around and picking up that loot. Another enhancement that they've made is in player movement. They have added sliding into the game. This isn't like a combat slide type thing. This is more of a, you're on a slope of a hill sliding. You'll slide down the slope. With this movement enhancement, they warn that you're going to have to be more careful when climbing and stopping on slopes. You'll have to sort of dig out little areas in those slopes so that you don't slide down. You'll have little places to rest and things like that. But they've done more than just add sliding. They've made it so that when you're running down slopes, you move faster. When you're running up slopes, is harder, so it's slower. When you're running on a grass or sand surface, it's slower. When you're running on paved surfaces from the paver, like roads and stuff like that, you will actually move faster. So you want to thank those pavers who build out roads for you to run along, because they're just not naturally in the world. A player had to place them there, and that's really great. That's going to be a nice little benefit to the pavers, because a lot of us are going to have to thank them for that hard work that they put in building those roads. They also state that gravel and slate are now somewhat slippery surfaces, so you will slide a bit on gravel. I've seen this effect when I stopped on top of a tailings pile from harvesting. I was sliding down it now instead of just standing on it, which is a cool, nice little effect. I can't wait to see what else they do there. I'd love to see a little particle effect happen when you're doing the sliding of some dust or some gravel shooting up. That'd be really cool based on how fast you're going. They've also done a harvesting update. So when you're using the harvester to get the flowers, the logs, the mushrooms, and the bushes, flowers and logs will respawn like they always have. They will just disappear and reappear somewhere else in the world. However, plants will do a trimmed effect where they will shrink down. And that's how that's going to work. And then they'll slowly return to full size unless you use growth on them. If you want to get rid of the bushes, you have to actually burn them now. And so that's one effect and change there. There are changes to the Xenoslicer. This is what you use to cut down the trees. We normally had two modes. We had the logging and the seedings. That's still there. They added in pruning. This allows you to actually shrink down the plant. On top of that, you get to that by hitting the Q key when cycling through the different modes when you're in growth mode. So when you have it on the planting and growing stuff, that's when you hit the Q key. So when you're on grow, you just hit the left mouse button. When you switch it, hit the Q key, you switch over to prune. You hit the left mouse button and we'll shrink it. And this does not work outside of homesteads though. So it will not work out in the wild. Only in your homesteads can you shrink a plant. You can also stop the growth of a plant by hitting the E key. Once again, this only works in homesteads. The pruning functionality is in the forestry tree because of the changes that they've made, and it's literally at the bottom. And I'll explain more about that later. Another change that they've made is they added in a sound effect for the Xenoslicer. It has a really cool, nice sound effect. Unfortunately, I forgot to have my audio turned on when making these recordings to get that, but it sounds really nice. Then there's the forestry and farming changes that they made. They moved some things around, and on the skill nodes that have been removed from forestry and added into the farming section, and they added in more into forestry. Some of the stuff that they add into the forestry stuff is the growth stuff. And then down at the very bottom, you'll see the stunting and the pruning skill capabilities, which is nice. It gives us more reason to go out there and farm. However, right now there is a slight bug when you use the Xenoslicer to cut down trees. It's not giving experience. They're aware of this. They're going to work on this issue, but the planting is a great way to get that forestry experience. So just plant and grow the trees and stuff like that, and you'll be perfectly fine. Another thing that they've done is they have taken cooking out of the crafting section. So cooking is now its own section under crafting, and works out really nice there because you have the different recipes that you can learn, and so you can pick and choose what ones you want to learn. I really like that change. The artisan tree still has the architect, civil engineering, the refining, the tool making, and the weaponsmithing that we had before, so no change there. Another note that they made is you automatically by default get the oil and plastic recipes. You do not have to discover them which is sort of a nice little benefit that helps out with the crafting and being able to increase your crafting skills a lot easier without having to go down the cooking route like we were in the past. Here are some other changes that have happened. You now earn medical XP for using the Helix. That means the healing beam, the mass heal, and the surge specialty will now generate creature aggro. The more aggro you create, the more medical XP you generate, but they warn to be careful because you can pull too much aggro. So you have to be careful. You don't want to be like that cleric in EverQuest where you're spamming heals to where you pull the mob off the tank and it's now attacking you instead of attacking the tank. So spread out your heals. Heal when needed. You also put in a new way of noticing when you discover a new resource, because before it was, oh, you went to harvest something, you see this big number and a bunch of small numbers and they're both that yellow color. Well, now when you discover a new resource, it will come up as a light blue number and then you'll get your normal harvesting yellow numbers popping up. I find this really nice. It catches the eye a lot more. With someone with an eye disability, I really greatly appreciate this. They're two totally separate colors, so it's easy for me to recognize. Crafting XP has been altered for more complex rewards for greater amount of XP. So the more complicated the recipe is of what you're crafting, the more experience you will get. They also stated that anti-gravium blocks are now available to be created in the Instaformer, and that you use the lathe station to create these blocks, and that they do not have any anti-gravity properties right now. They plan to add those later on because they talked about that even before they put in the anti-gravium blocks be built, that they want to make it so that you can have floating bases and stuff like that. That this is probably the first step of doing that. It's just a look. You'll get a really nice, interesting looking new type of brick to use for now. They've also added in thicket bushes. These are big bushes and you cannot harvest them. You cannot get anything from them. You cannot cut them down. The way you have to get rid of them is by burning this, and this goes for all bushes. They also add in collision to all of the other bushes. This makes moving around a little bit more complicated when in combat, so be careful what's around you even more now, but they've been doing a lot with that. And they've also added in the fact that trees now grow much slower. The new Xenoslicer growth beam will accelerate the growth period so you can grow them quicker, which is a nice thing. The floral harvesting of plants and trees was extremely overly generous and has, due to a bug, the bug has been fixed, so you're going to see a little bit of difference in the harvesting. Sometimes you may not get any resources whatsoever, but there will be a call out to that hey, there was no resources. Other times it will just be less than what you were getting before. You can also now collect antimatter gas and convert that into antimatter through the refiner. Oil can now be created using any sedimentary rock, not just slate. And this is really cool. I saw this in effect when creating oil. I was used to just seeing slate, and there's multiple different sediment rock types there that I could use. Clay recipes have been simplified. Clay ore was removed from the game, and you can now change to chunky lateral soil or just clay. Nice little change there. Bosses and high DR creatures are given more abilities to make them harder to chase with the terrain. They are temporarily reducing the XP gain for defeating them, but they are still worth more than the lower DR creatures, of course. The Omni Blaster has had audio improvements. The F1 key has been updated with this current information of what this patch has added. UI elements in the crafting screen have been fixed, so the PQRV stats are properly displaying. Survey points no longer just pop into view, they fade into view, which is a nice thing. And then they'll also fade out. And then the Helix no longer has the forced grow functionality, so you will not be able to force trees and bushes and stuff like that to grow. That is what the Xeno Slicer is there for, is for that whole entire growth tree that they added into the skill tree. I think this is a really nice add-on to enhance the world and make it more livable and nice. These are really smart changes for the whole entire thing of how trees work and bushes, flowers and stuff like that is really good. It does make it a little bit harder in the combat factor of the collision and things like that, but overall I think this is a good move forward for the game, and I cannot wait to see what they do with the next update. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed, subscribe, and have a great day.